We're here to eliminate stereotypes.
Magid is always early, Dan.
Always early.
Always.
Always early. I was raised
Thank you, Bob.
Episcopalian, so I know all about it. Well, welcome to everybody. We have a very special evening for you. Tonight's event is going to go for about an hour. This is really an event that is inspired by a film that UPF created called The Sultan and the Saint, which at ISNA, I think 1 year or 2 years ago, Imam Magid and Pastor Bob had a panel discussion inspired by our program, which was a national program bringing together these two faith communities, which is never an easy task. It's an experimental task, in my view. It's something which you really need innovators, you need pioneers, you need people who have a certain creative ideas for how to get past a lot of barriers, a lot of assumptions. And so Imam Magid and Pastor Bob are probably the foremost interfaith leaders on this nexus. And we're very happy to have them. In this time, UPF is offering what we're calling enrichment programs, and we invite all of you to join these webinars. These are interviews with scholars, presentations from UPF team members. We did a wonderful event with Michael Wolf and his poetry. On Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, we have a very rich program with Imam Yahya Hendi, who's a Muslim chaplain at Georgetown, and Michael Calabria, who is a Franciscan scholar of Islam, on the topic Jesus in Islam. So that's going to be a kind of theological conversation. On Thursday, we have a program also at 5:30 with Dr. Susan Douglas, which is going to be an unveiling of a new website on Islamic Spain that we created. This is a website which was supported by Georgetown and a huge grant. And it's one of these things which, as an educator, you could get lost in this website. There's literally thousands of pages. It's the most comprehensive website for educators on the history of Islamic Spain, which is 600 years of Muslim presence within Europe. And most people don't really know about this presence, which famously really ended in 1492. So, you know, join us for these events. And we're very happy also to have Shakila Ahmad, who is a community leader, a business professional, and a former president of the Islamic Center of Greater Cincinnati, Ohio. She is the first Muslim American female to be in this role at such an institution. Shakila will be our moderator. We have Q&A available, so we'll have a community portion of tonight's event. But Shakila is going to really start by framing this conversation and helping get us all on the same page. So with that, I'll stop talking and turn it over to our fearless leader for the night.
That's a bit daunting, but thank you, Daniel. It's an honor to be here, and it's particularly an honor to be here with Pastor Bob and Imam Magid, who are truly icons in terms of the interfaith work in this particular arena. I am delighted to introduce them and to work, with UPF for this meaningful conversation. And we hope that all of you not just listen, but engage, because we'll have an opportunity to do a Q&A at the end. Dr. Bob Roberts Jr. is the founding senior pastor of Northwood Church in Fort Worth, Texas. Northwood has really started over 200 churches in the U.S. and a center for training new pastors. He is a leading practitioner and writer on local transformation and individuals, religious communities, NGOs, cities, and global engagement, having worked extensively with the UN and various state departments globally. So I think he has a wealth of experience as well as knowledge, and I understand a wonderful personality to share with us. Imam Magid Mohammed Magid is the executive Imam of All Dulles Area Society, Adams Center in Sterling, Virginia. He is the chairman of the International Interfaith Peace Corps, the IIPC, and the former president of the Islamic Society of North America, ISNA. He is a recipient, among many other things, of the Washingtonian of the Year in 2009 and the Human Rights Award in 2005 from Fairfax County. And it is always an honor to have had Imam Magid in Cincinnati on a variety of things. And we look to his leadership at the national level. So thank you. I know you were in a program this afternoon as well. So thank you so much for being part of the conversation. What we want to do is, you know, we're at a point where times are challenging, and the conversation between Muslims and evangelicals is something that probably is not known and probably is lacking. So I really would like for us to start off with, you know, both of you knowing that places of worship are so dear to both Muslims and evangelicals, as to what are your thoughts for fellow Christians and fellow Muslims and other people of faith at this time, you know, as faith communities. Pastor Bob, would you like to start?
Sure. I think with everything that we see happening in the world right now, there's a very real sense in which it could go really good or really bad. I'm sorry to say that our two communities, there's a lot of suspicion, a lot of confusion, a lot of stereotypes, and there's a lot of tension. Evangelicals, I'm sorry to say, my tribe has the most negative view of Muslims in America. The only group that's more negative are evangelical pastors. And so whereas there is actually hate speech on the other side of the world, sometimes coming from imams to the mosque, in the US it's reversed. It's hate speech coming from evangelical pastors to their churches. And that's why we're seeing a slide. I think in the pandemic, it has a tendency to exacerbate all of these misconceptions, all of these underlying events. When I go outside and walk in the park behind my house, I live in primarily an Anglo community, but man, I don't care if they're Chinese or Arab or Indian or whatever, I go out of my way to smile and affirm, simply because I think it's up to us to set the tone of how we're going to be civil with one another. How do we view one another? But I also think, even though things are bad, it could get worse, frankly. Anti-Semitism has gone up during this period. Islamophobia has. White supremacy has. I mean, these things are very serious. It's also a moment and an opportunity to work together. Sadly, I used to have the idea that me and a bunch of Christians could change the world on our own. We didn't need anybody else, just us and Jesus, and that was enough. And you know, I found out that's not true. That Christians were meant to work in the public square with people of other faith, even if they disagree with us. So I think there is a moment that the tragedy we're facing gives us an opportunity to say, let's work together.
Beautiful, thank you. Imam Magid, your thoughts?
First of all, I would like to thank you for hosting us and interviewing me and my dear friend, Pastor Bob Roberts. He's the pastor of pastors. There's many pastors here in America and around the world really look up to his leadership. I want to say that, you know, the COVID-19 is a great reminder that humanity is one family. You have a virus that does not discriminate against any race, have touched every country almost in the planet Earth. And every community around the world have been impacted by this. And that makes all of us, whether Christians, Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist, to rethink our positions and our tribal mentality. That we are no longer, we can claim that we can isolate ourselves. No longer we can say that we can ignore the vulnerable people in the world. And that's why this friendship that developed between me and my friend Bob Roberts have impacted other imams and other pastors. We need to make this globally being the case, that people of faith, they have to act upon their values and virtues that treat every human being as dignified, honorable creation of God. But this was my thinking this time, that it is the moment. It's a moment that to break down the walls and to cross the borders, artificial borders that we have created.
We do. No, both of you are very insightful in the sense that it seems like we have a lot of work to do and we're not going to be able to do it alone. And so however it is that we can overcome those barriers is absolutely essential. You know, one of the barriers that exists is, you know, both of our communities, evangelicals as well as Muslims, and studies show this, feel like they're the most discriminated against group. And, you know, and that, you know, how do you see that? You know, is it a plight? Is it an opportunity? You know, and do you hear that from your congregation? And how do we look at it as an opportunity? Either one of you.
Well, you know, I would just say this, and Shakila, I also want to thank you for allowing us to be on this program. Magid is so classy, isn't he? I mean, he remembers everything. He is so smooth. Deep down, he wants to be a TV personality. Hold your cup up, Magid. Hold your cup up. Come on, hold your cup up. I thank God for this. There, come on, turn it around. Isn't that beautiful? Great state of Texas. That's where I'm at tonight. So I think when we look at where we are, we have this feeling of other people having more control. And look, there's no doubt about it. I'm Anglo-Saxon. We've had a lot of privilege for centuries. And so there's a threat. Oh, am I still going to get my voice heard? I'm losing power. I'm losing control, losing status. Those things are very real. And people feel that. I don't blame it on racial issues as much as I do just economic issues, globalization. These things are happening around the world. So if you were to ask, so yes, evangelicals feel that way. If you were to ask Pakistanis, some of them feel the same way. In Pakistan, there's something about the majority. When we have to give others rights, we feel like, oh, this is just terrible. You know, I'm losing control. And it's not. And here's the other thing I would say. And I need to be careful what I say here because I could make my tribe really upset with me. But me and Magid are in places where religious freedom and persecution are real. I mean, people are in prison, they're losing their lives, churches are burned. I mean, I'm dealing with a situation that's going on today in another country around the world. And I see people get upset because, you know, maybe, you know, they can't worship the exact time that they want to because of X, Y, or Z or someone else. You know, tell me, are you about to lose your life? Can you worship? Are you in prison? I think we're getting, I'm sorry to say, I fear we're moving from religious freedom to identity politics. And we are labeling that as religious freedom. And I think that's a very dangerous and slippery slope to go on. So, but I do believe this. In each situation, it's up to the majority. If the majority doesn't, this is one of the things I begin to realize around the world. If you want to deal with prejudice, racism, religious bigotry, you've got to go to the majority. You know, the idea is the minority has to fight for their rights, and if they don't fight, they don't get it. Well, that's true. They have to speak up. But Lyndon Johnson had to listen to Martin Luther King, and then pushed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 through. Martin Luther King could not do that. He could say it's not right, it's wrong. Johnson had to do that. He was in the majority. There's no way it would have happened any other way. So I think instead of the majority's mindset being, I want my way, I want my freedom, don't infringe on me, it's okay if I give up some of my rights to make room for someone else so that they can also practice their faith. And if I don't do that, they're not going to be able to have religious freedom. So the majority has to sacrifice for the sake of the minority, or you won't get anywhere.
And keeping it in perspective, you know, keeping it real, as you mentioned, as to, you know, we talk about first world problems. It's understanding what people are truly struggling with will help us to keep it real. So thank you for raising the voice of the majority having to take the leadership. And that applies to other parts of the world where the minority could be a Christian community or a Sikh community. So Imam Magid, what are your thoughts? I mean, you hear so much and have to deal so much with Islamophobia, you know, but how can we put it into perspective in this conversation?
Yeah, first of all, I agree 100% with what Baba just mentioned. We have to remember that privilege is not a bad thing. It's a great thing to have privilege. The problem is, what do you do with the privilege? You cannot get upset because majority are white. You cannot get upset because majority are Christian. You should not get upset because of that. The challenge is, what are the majority are really doing with the privilege? There's no place in the world that people have privilege all the time. You go to Sudan, the minute the Bab will arrive into the airport, he's a minority and he has no privilege. He will be under my wing and I have to protect him. But there's a Christian minority in Sudan. There's a Christian minority in Pakistan. There's a Christian minority in Syria. There's a Christian minority in Iraq. The challenge is that, what are the measures Muslims majority are taking? What are they doing with the privilege to protect their fellow citizens? Because people might be minority in number, but they are full citizens. The equal rights in citizenship. And that's why I promoted this concept long time ago when I was the president of ISNA. I started this initiative with my fellow members of ISNA to protect the minorities in majority Muslim countries. And Sheikh Bambiya, Jazakallah Khair, led us in the scholarship, and we have this document being produced in Morocco. The issue is this: if Muslims around the world will stand for the rights of their fellow citizens from the other faith and protect their churches, protect their synagogue, protect their temples, then they will be living their faith. They will be really practicing Islam. They're not doing a favor to anyone. They're just being true Muslims. If Christians in this country, they practice love thy neighbor, they become like Jesus in every aspect of it, then you will not hear prejudice and bigotry in churches. The same thing with Muslim in the mosque. Therefore, the issue is this, that how can we remind people to live up to their values and faith by looking to another human being like equal to them, regardless of their color of skin, regardless of their religion, and to love them, not only to tolerate them. Not tolerate them. Tolerance is really a minimum, aspect of this relationship. You have to have respect and protections, and to believe this person have equal right to you of honor and dignity.
So what I hear both of you saying is that really the foundation for overcoming this discrimination and, the hatred is really grounded in both of our faith communities. And, it compels us to really to rise up, whether we're the minority or the majority, to live up to our faith and speaking up and fighting for the rights of others. One thing that I've found is, and I'm truly passionate about this conversation going further, because we here and across the country have made tremendous, I think, inroads, even across the world, with the Catholic community. UPF has this beautiful film, Sultan and the Saint, and I was privileged to have it premiere here in collaboration with Xavier University, a Jesuit Catholic institution. And, we had 500-700 people there. But I feel like somehow we haven't been able to cross that barrier to the evangelical community. Pastor Bob, do you have any insights for us as to, and both of you actually, because you've been working on this, for the audience as well, what are ways that we might be able to reach and connect with the evangelical Christian brothers and sisters?
I think there are two things for evangelicals that are critical. And you actually referred to it, Shakila, and what you talked about, what our faiths teach. And so where I start with evangelicals from our side is at our text, because we're commanded to love God, love our neighbor. Okay, don't be offended by this. Even love our enemy. So my response to evangelicals is, I don't believe that Muslims are our enemies, but let's pretend for the sake of the argument, Muslims are our enemies. What is our response according to Jesus to our enemies? Is it to be vindictive? Is it to fight them? Is it to confront them? Is it to argue with them? Is it to trash them? The only people, frankly, that we're to judge are other believers, not anyone outside the faith. We don't have that freedom. So if you love your enemy, that's the game changer. Jesus says anyone can love, someone that loves you. Can you love someone who hates you? And so our job as evangelicals, if we're going to be real evangelicals, true to our faith and pure, love your enemies. It radically redefines the whole conversation. So on our side, it's that. On the Muslim side, the key is relationship. Here's what Magid and I have learned. It's really not, I'm not going to say that. Dialogue isn't, I was going to say it's not about dialogue. Dialogue is important. It is not enough. And so far, all we've had is dialogue. We sit around and we talk. This Christian talks to that Muslim. Oh, wasn't that fun? That was nice. That's not enough. Because still what that does, that leaves evangelicals and Muslims disconnected. Magid and I do these retreats all over the world, all over the U.S. We'll get imams and pastors together. Within 3 days, all of them have changed their minds about one another. And here's what's interesting, Shakila. Not a single one of them changed their mind because we gave them new information they didn't know. It's because we focused on building relationships. So you have to sit down and tell your story, but we don't stop with just the imam and the pastor and the rabbi. It then goes to the congregation because it's got to go grassroots. And the challenge I have with interfaith dialogue is that's all it is. And it may help clerics understand one another a little bit, but it doesn't build bridges. The primary ground is the conference. It's the speaker stand. I don't like that. We've got to get in the dirt. We've got to go to the grassroots. And see, I've got to model that. When Magid comes to our church, our people love him. I'm an evangelical, okay? Shakila, I'm as conservative as you can be as an evangelical, all right? Let me just say that. And don't ask me a bunch of those hard questions. Ask me later. Let's stay on the subject tonight. But did you know when Magid comes to our church, do you know what they do? They clap for him and give him a standing ovation.
Oh, God bless.
That doesn't mean they think he's right. They tell me all the time, Bob, you got to get that man baptized. Are you praying for him? Are you doing your job? And I stood up at our church and I said, I've really blown it, guys. I'm doing the best I can. But guess who taught Islam at our church? Magid did. And I could get an evangelical to teach Islam, but I'm going to be blunt with you. Half of what they teach is going to be false. They don't know any better. They read books. The goal is to defeat the Muslim, not show the difference of what we believe. So when Magid is speaking, they're going, oh, he doesn't try to hold it secret that, you know, they don't believe Jesus is God. None of that. We're going back and forth. But Magid and I are modeling that. We have a way of talking, and it's a game changer. I'll get up sometimes and I'll just show you this. So Magid, I'm just curious. Do you believe Jesus was born of a virgin?
Yes, I do.
Do you believe that he worked miracles?
Absolutely.
Do you believe that he was perfect?
Yes.
Do you believe that he's coming again?
We do that.
Do you believe that he died on the cross for the sins of the world, and if you'll accept him into your life right now, you can know him?
No, brother.
See, Shakila, he's almost there. I mean, I'm doing the best. I'm doing the best that I can. So we fundamentally disagree about Jesus. I really believe the cross is necessary for atonement and for the forgiveness of sins. But when they see we disagree and we're not screaming at one another, he doesn't believe in Jesus the way that I believe in Jesus because he wants to spite me. He believes what he believes because his basis of truth teaches him what he believes. It's not that he hates me or he's trying to trash my religion. Likewise, I can't be upset that he disagrees with me. I wish he agreed with me, but here's something else. Whether he agrees with me or not, I still love him. And I'm not going to love him more because he agrees with me than he disagrees with me. Because, see, I view Magid as created in the image of God. So I think that relationship, we've got to ask the question, how are we building that relationship?
At all levels. So Imam Magid, when you're talking to Pastor Bob's church or you're talking to other evangelicals, what's going through your heart and mind? What is it that you want them to know and understand?
You know, we have a really great experience, Bob and I. I was with him, we're together in Austin, and we went to, I think, Philadelphia. When we went to Philly, a pastor came to me, I think Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Pittsburgh. He came to me and says, my heart have changed today. My heart have changed. That means a lot to me. It means a lot to me that somebody made a connection to me as fellow human being and no longer have this misconception, misunderstanding of who I am. As Bob have said, it's not because information was given to him, because he spent time with me, get to know me. As you know, the statistic shows those who have met a Muslim, have talked to a Muslim, have better understanding more than anyone else. For we are in this gathering of pastors, and I joke with them, and I said this joke before, like I asked Bob, did Jesus ever, did he eat pork?
For the first time in my life, I realized he didn't.
He did not.
I had never thought about that before.
And therefore he went and asked the pastor, Magid asked me a question, did Jesus eat pork? And the people said, no, I think he was Jewish. And then I said, okay, now I'll give them fatwa, you know. Imam give fatwa to pastors. They should not eat pork. We had these discussions and people see us having this friendly, brotherly discussions, and they change their mind. The Muslims, they change their mind about Christians. And the Christians change their mind about Muslims, because it's all about relationships. It's about really humanizing one another and engaging in serious conversation about what are the issues that we need to address in our local community.
And Shakila,
what are the issues the rabbi, the imam, and the pastor can address, and the Jewish leaders can address in the local community?
Shakila, can I just add one thing there?
Sure.
Here's what I've discovered too. your faith gets stronger.
Absolutely.
I had to ask the question, what do I really believe and why do I believe it? And I think whether it's Muslims or Christians, a lot of us believe what we believe because that's what the preacher said. Or we were raised with it, and we never thought deeply about it. I was in Saudi Arabia, and a newscaster asked me, he said, so what has being with all these Muslims done to you? And obviously he was a Muslim with the Saudi news. And I said, it's made me a better Christian. And he goes, what? It took him aback. I said, no, it has, because I've had to think, what do I believe and why do I believe it? Did you know I'm probably stronger in my belief in the Trinity because of Muslims? Because I had to study it more. If I'm going to follow Jesus according to the New Testament, what does this mean?
That is an excellent point. I think the one thing that in the 20 years of getting our community and the into interfaith and doing the cross-community work is knowing about others does not lessen your faith. It is an opportunity to strengthen your faith. The other thing, before we leave this particular topic, I want to just, you alluded to it, Pastor Bob, and Imam Magid, I know how much your boots on the ground doing work together. So, what do you have an example of success where communities have not just started to talk, but they have started to do work together in order, to improve the world that we're raising all of our kids in?
Tell them, Magid. Lots of stories.
I'll give you an example. We had a meeting of pastors and Imam from Pakistan. We have gathered them in one of those Middle Eastern countries. We brought them together. And after we finished the retreat, they fostered a relationship. And then Imam came back to visit us in the United States. He said that we had the Christians in our mosque for Ramadan. We went there to them for during Christmas time. Our community protected the church from being attacked. In America, we have pastors went and protected a mosque because of the people surrounding the mosque. Some of those guys from the tribe of Bob Roberts. Yeah. And this pastor was with us in one of the retreat. He took his people and went to the church, went to the mosque, and they protected the mosque and opened up a dialogue between the people standing outside, intimidating the Muslims, having guns outside the masjid. In Arizona. But it is very important to see the impact on people's mind. I have a pastor in Maryland. He said to me the first time I met an Imam in his life. A guy, this amazing man, has thousands of people in his church, very influential Christian pastor. And now him and I developed a friendship where he came to my sermon more than once at Adams, and he told me, Magid, I love you. I have been in his church. For all of that, of relationship building would not have happened if it wasn't this man we're talking to, Bob, have taken the risk that having people left his church and have invited Imam and pastor in Texas from 12 cities. And in the first day, those pastors said, no pictures. We don't like to be seen with Muslims. Seriously. After 3 days, that's now 5 years ago. After 3 days, they start laughing and inviting one another to their churches and so forth, because we did all kind of horseback riding, all kind of things, and they did shooting. I was first, like I said, oh my God, this is like
Magid was good with the gun. I mean, you should have seen him
in Texas. They want to entrap us. They want to take picture of Muslim shooting so that they said Muslim camping in Texas. But else was crazy. Then after that, really become a friendship and relationship that's amazing with every community that they had their Imam there in that gathering. Bob, if I miss anything,
no, we could go all day long. Shakila, here's what we talk about. Interfaith generally starts with the head. You have an intellectual conversation. And then if you like it, it goes to the heart. And then if you agree with me, then it goes to the hand. We reverse the order. We say start with the hand, sweat together. When you sweat together and you're serving the community around a common project, you get to know one another. Then it captures the heart, and then you can have the deep conversations with the head. But a lot of times what we do, we start with the hardest question with absolutely no relationship. What do we expect? You've got to start somewhere, and I say start with the common good of the city that you live in.
Absolutely. And we all, I think it's important for the audience to listen to you, and the stories that you've shared is that, we all have an opportunity to model the behavior and the relationships and the work, all of these things for the people with whom we have direct relationship with. So you're there at the national level to model this, the relationship and the work that can be done. But everyone on this call has an opportunity to model for other people, because the people that really need that modeling quite often are not the ones that come on the call. They don't come to the talk when you invite, Imam Magid, and vice versa. So I think we all have a lot to learn from the stories that you're sharing. I'm going to ask you one other thing, and then we're going to move on to questions from the audience as well. Is that, in this particular time, and I know this is a question you're getting a lot, but how do we manage faith communities and spiritually staying uplifted in this virtual time and space that we're in?
You go, man. You go.
Imam.
Bob, you want to address it?
Okay, so here's what I would say. I think we could both speak to that. There's a principle in the Hebrew scriptures. There's a story about Joseph, and Joseph and his brothers, and I'm assuming that's in the Quran, but I don't know for sure, Magid.
Yes.
Okay.
The whole chapter called Joseph.
Okay.
I can teach you that one day.
All right, sounds good. I'll let you. But there's a beautiful line in that story where his brothers have sold him into slavery, and there's a famine, and he winds up saving his brothers. And here's what's said. You meant it. He tells his brothers, they're afraid he's going to take vengeance on him. He says, you meant it for evil. God meant it for good.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a crisis like this, we need to ask the question, what can I learn through this? When people go through a hard time, my first statement is, don't waste a crisis. Don't waste suffering. What is God saying to you? What is he saying to us? I've had people tell me they've been better husbands and fathers over the last 3 months than they have their entire life. They've been better at marriage. They've been better at parenting. I went to see my son yesterday. He has a big job in DC. He travels all over the world. He's a big guy like me. What is he doing in his yard? It was our 40th anniversary. So I want to see the kids and grandkids. So we just have to wave from the car. So we go, and I see my little grandkids dressed up like Disney characters. And my big old 35-year-old son is dressed up like Spider-Man or no, Batman with the cape and everything else. And he's playing with his kids. And here's some things that I tell people. I actually said this in my sermon Sunday. Slow down. I mean, we've got an opportunity to be with our family. Look at the good. You're probably never going to have a chance like this to be at home with everyone ever again in your life. Don't whine about it. Don't gripe about it. For the most part, you can eat. Yes, you're limited, but enjoy it. This is rare. Don't view it as a horrible thing. View it as an opportunity. So that's the first thing I would say. Then I would say it's a time to reflect, inventory. Where do I need to grow? What are some things in my life that need to change? I don't know. I'm probably like a lot of people. I've realized I've been going way too fast and doing way too much. And I've actually gotten more organized than I've ever been right now, so that I can actually grow what Magid and I do. But you get so busy, you're rushing to this and rushing to that, and you're invited to be on this program and that program, and you need to be there, and boy, you can't miss that. Who says you can't miss that?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to go back and say, who matters? And give them our time. One of my points in my sermon was Sunday, don't let everyone steal your family from you. Sports, extracurricular activities. I mean, you can't even worship anymore in America because there's so much sports all the time. Take your family back. So I just think there's a lot of things that we can learn.
A lot of opportunities.
Yeah. The same thing here. I would like to say that I'm very happy that I spent this Ramadan with my family. That so far I have every day iftar with my family. Never happened in the United States. I'm so happy with that. But also what sense of humility, that sometimes we believe that we're in control. That we can get up and leave and do everything that we want to do. And God wants us to stay still, to think, to reflect, to appreciate, all of that. The other things that make me think more about people who have difficulty moving from their home. I visited my dear brother Bob Roberts and myself. We visit the Rohingya together. That's one of the things we do around the world. We go and see the people who are vulnerable around the world to become their voice. And I have seen those people living in very difficult situation. They could not move. They've been sick. Now, I'm the Rohingya, but with luxury, with Zoom, with Texas Cup, with air condition, with delivery, with Amazon. Imagine people in refugee camps. It makes me really think that some people have every day have fear for their life. And all I'm doing is just washing my hand and hand sanitizers and those people every day they're running for their life. And think about it, that we've been tested by staying home, but those people been tested by leaving home. They left their home. Therefore, that's what's all for me now. But I've been doing a lot of sermon online, classes online, counseling online, but I've been thinking about those people around the world as well.
Well, you know, you both have said such wise and important things, and I really hope that people take an opportunity to reflect on that. We don't have time to unpack all of that, but really spot on and so important. I want to remind people to go ahead and ask questions via their chat bar. We do have some questions. We have the first one from Isra, and I apologize if I butcher the last name, Yazeshugli. But Isra would like to know, what do you think of religion being reduced to a type of racial identity, something people, you know, belong despite their choice? How do you think we can cooperate at this context of content of some faith essentials that we share? So, you know, I mean, I think Pastor Bob, you touched on it a little bit earlier. So either one of you, if you'd like to jump in, how can we get beyond that? How do we, you know, leverage faith to get beyond that?
I'll let you go, Magid. You'd probably be best.
Yes, religious nationalism is one of the most dangerous things for religion. That's to begin with. Number two, that we have to create a balance between religious identity and the global identity. There's some people want people to lose their identity. They want the evangelical Christian no longer to be evangelical Christian. They want the Muslim no longer to be a Muslim. And they want them to let go of their faith so it can be accepted in some level in the global understanding of identity. I'm really against or disagree, let's say, with this kind of concept of losing identity in order for you to create acceptance. You know, the the issue of assimilation and integration and isolation. Some people believe in isolation. Those are tribal people. There's some people believe in assimilation. Those are people who have superiority complex. They want everyone to be like them. And then the people believe in integration. Those are people who respect other people's faith, other people's culture, and they see us as human beings, as one family with very diverse identity, and that's called the salad bowl, because one of that's called melting pot. You know, everyone's melting in something. You know? Like some people will say, you know, I'm colorblind. I said, don't be colorblind, because you're saying that I don't see your color. And this is a white culture, my friend. I'm sorry that they invented this colorblind to say I don't see as black, I see you as white. No, see me as black. And the same thing, you know, a Muslim maybe get upset because a Christian said what he believes in. That's what he is. You cannot try to force your view and belief on somebody else. And religion is not a label. It's a concept. The minute you reduce it to labels, it becomes a problem.
I think you've got to show them an alternative too. So Shakila, let me give you just one example. I really am close to Magid. I mean, I consider him one of my best friends on the face of the earth. I mean, I'll share with him personal things and we'll pray for one another and so forth. And, but in the midst of that, when we start talking about things and the way it is, it's critical that I never minimize what I believe and how I believe it, but I learn to say it in the kindest, gentlest, positive way. So I have this principle we talk about, one conversation. So the whole world is listening. So if I say one thing to my church when Magid isn't there, but another thing when he's there, it's not honest. I need to say the same thing both times. And so, but I just brought Magid. I mean, I model it to our church. I model it to other pastors. So we have this conference where we talk about how we're going to reach the world for Jesus. And I have a bunch of my sons in the Lord, if you will, about 150 of them gather. Well, guess who came and spoke to him this year? Magid. Now, some people would say, why in the world would you have a Muslim come to a conference when you talk about how to communicate the good news of Jesus to everyone, including Muslims? Because I think it's wrong to view people as projects. And so I don't know. I want them to see there has to be a love there. It's not a matter of, okay, you know, can you love someone who's not in your faith? I think that's a very important question. And guess what? We do all the time. I promise you, there are Christians with children, Muslims with children who don't know God, and we still love those kids. Let me tell you something real funny that happened. So I was at a friend of mine's mosque one time. I went. And so he called me at the last minute, and it's a very big mosque. It's here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So he called me at the last minute. Something come up. I can't be there. There's going to be another speaker, but sit by this man. And so I knew the man. And so he met me at the door, and I go in. And so the guy sounded like a Baptist preacher. I mean, he was up there getting with it. It was Friday prayers, Magid. He's going, and you know, you shouldn't sin. If you don't live right, your kids are going to turn out bad and they're going to get wrong. And he said, they're going to wind up accepting Christ and becoming Christians. And you're going to ask the question, where did I go wrong? And I tried not to laugh, but I thought, I've heard that 1,000 times in the evangelical church. My kids grew up and they left Christianity and they became Muslims or Jews or whatever. and you know, but what that says is, the other religion is evil. I don't believe that anymore. I believe people are looking for God, and we don't have to vilify them.
Thank you. I think one of the questions, and you both have answered it, is one of the questions was, what impact has welcoming Muslims had on the theology and faithfulness of your congregation? And that same question could be asked of Imam Magid, and what I hear you both saying is that, you know, it has enlightened them. It has allowed them to see the other for the human beings that they are and to appreciate them for who they are, not to be blind to who they are because of their identity or our identity, but to really appreciate, you know, God's creation and having them amongst us. So thank you for answering that without me having to ask it. Another question that we have is, what do your fellow, well, yeah, I mean, I think you've kind of answered this as well. I think it's amusing. You need to hear is, what do your fellow Christians think of you being so friendly with those Muslims?
They call us the Muslim church sometimes. They mean it as an insult. If you Google me, you'll find out I'm a secret Muslim and all kind of crazy stuff. I think when you're going to build bridges with people, the biggest challenge is your tribe. It's not the other person, it's your own tribe. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to be a peacemaker, you better have tough skin. It just goes with the territory.
Yeah. And by the way, this is the historical too. Mm-hmm. Who are the people who went against Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him? Were they American, Chinese, or Arabs? It's his own family. Who are the people who went against Jesus? Who are the people who went against Moses at his time? The people who lived with them and was raised in his own house, the house of Pharaoh. Therefore, you have to expect that people, our own tribe, going to stand in your way sometimes, or try to stand in your way to build bridges. But leaders has to be leaders, cannot be followers in that. And then you have to pave the way for generation to come.
Me and Magid were at a meeting together, Shakila, and we were saying it's very difficult for me as a Christian building bridges with Muslims, and it's very difficult for Magid being Muslim with his tribe. So we have something we wish to announce to everyone at this time. We have decided, in the interest of peace, we're both going to become Buddhist.
That's the way to wake them up. You know, I think there's a lot of interest, and perhaps Danielle and Fakhr can help to illuminate the ways that, you know, people from our both faith communities are joining hands in order to make a difference in Virginia and in Texas, because people are looking for those examples and concrete ways in which they can take the dialogue and then put it to work, you know, using their hands and their own efforts, putting basically our words into deeds. Another question that we have is that it's for both of you, is do you think we as Muslims and evangelicals can cooperate in supporting family values?
Man, here's what's shocking. When evangelicals get together with imams, they're shocked at how much they have in common. Mm-hmm. They have this idea that we are opposite and different, and there's a whole lot of family values. As a matter of fact, there's a group of significant, very significant businessmen who recently reached out to me because they're concerned about this whole concept of family values. And they'd heard about what Magid and I do. And I've had 3 conversations with them. They want to meet Magid. They want to find other Muslim businessmen that are significant leaders in the community in order to say, hey, we agree on some of these values. How can we work together? That's exciting because that's culture changing there.
Right.
Yeah.
Reaching far beyond the pulpit. Imam Magid, your thoughts?
Yeah, actually, when those imams and pastors met together in Texas, after we finished our program, the official program, and they were hanging out and talking late at night and laughing and so forth, the imam come to me and says, goodness, we come to discover we really have so much in common. And the pastor said the same thing. You know, people become enemy of what they don't know. Ignorance Absolutely. Is one of the major factors in misconception, misunderstanding, bigotry, and hate. For there's a lot in common. By the way, there's no person that, you know, in this world does not care about their children. There's no person, normal human being does not want a good future for their children. And those children, they're growing up in the same neighborhood. America no longer is one ethnicity. Not only America, the globe. There's no place in the world where there's no minorities. And every minority in every country is a majority somewhere else. That's the global context. Muslims are minority in America, but they're majority somewhere else. Christians are majority here, minority somewhere else. Jewish, and every person have to think about this dynamic of minority, majority relationship is a global phenomenon. And therefore that we have to really rethink our positions and our tribalism.
So really, I mean, there's some beautiful thoughts and a couple of comments that I want to share with the rest of the audience as well. But two things that the point that you just made about, how this pandemic has forced us to realize that sometimes there are no borders. I mean, sometimes, we are one humanity that is dealing with the exact same thing. And so it's incumbent upon us to leverage that in order to help find solution for the sake of all children. And the other point that I think is very worth repeating from you, Pastor Bob, is that if we are going to make a difference, leaders are going to have to take a risk. This is not risk-free. And, in my little world that I live in, I remember 20 years ago, wanting to go to a synagogue or wanting to have Christians at the Jummah prayer, and people would be like, what's wrong with Shakila? And, and it takes time. It takes time, but you have to exhibit leadership. You have to take those risks. You have to bring people along, and it's amazing what value that they can add once you do that. The two things that as our time is drawing near, and I certainly want to give you any last comments you would like to make, but one of the things that really is important, someone highlighted that having Muslims and evangelical partnerships in projects of common benefit to the community, such as shelter building, food pantries, might have more impactful in relationship building than the dialogues, which is, I know, Pastor Bob alluded to that. I know Imam Magid has had, I know personally, dozens of experiences or examples of that. So those are real opportunities for us to bring common people together and remove those boundaries that sometimes are, existing today. The last comment that I'll share, and then I'll give you maybe 1 minute each to share your thoughts before we leave, is Maria, and I bet I know which Maria this is. If I know my Maria friend from Cincinnati, she says, your friendship gives me hope. May God bless you both. And, and I think a lot of us feel that way, is that you truly model an example for us and relationship that is absolutely impacting not just both of your lives, clearly, you see through the friendship, but the lives of hundreds and thousands of other people that you have the opportunity to touch. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I would just thank you, Shakila, for this experience, and Magid, getting to spend the evening with you. It's been fun. The first time I ever heard the Muslim call to prayer was about 4:30 in the morning in Kandahar, Afghanistan, in the middle of a war, in February 2002, and it scared me to death. In my ears, there wasn't anything of beauty. It was fear. What is that man saying? Is he saying, kill the Christian? What does this mean? That was 2002. When I go to Magid's mosque, I love to hear him lead in prayer. I now know what it means. There's something about prayer The thing I love about Islam the most is prayer. It's built around prayer. I love that. A Christian pastor told me not long ago, Magid, a very prominent man, he said, if we could get Christians praying just half as much as Muslims do, it would change our faith for the better. And you know what? He's right. And here's what I believe. There's some things that we're not going to know until we see God one day. We can study, we can take our best bet, but until we see God, we're not going to know. But here's what I do know. When all of us call out to God, he hears our prayers. I believe that with all my being. I don't think God says, Bob, you're right and Magid's wrong, so I'm not going to listen to Magid. Or Magid could say the same thing. He hears our prayers. And I think this is a time where we can pray, God, bring us together, like you said, Shakila, for the sake of the world. What an opportunity for prayer. And I'm not going to miss that.
Thank you. Beautiful. Imam Magid?
You know, when I came to United States in 1987, I have not imagined in my wild dream that I will develop a friendship, so close friendship with a pastor from Texas. I have not dreamed, I have not really thought that I will be speaking to pastors from around the United States and around the world. But I'm going to tell you, this journey of reaching out and working out with my fellow Americans who are Christians have really given me the hope that there's really a chance for all of us Americans to can work together, can make this country really a model and example for others. A man who is an immigrant, a black man, a Muslim, hanging out. Most of them are white, evangelical, Christians, and they still develop a relationship with them. There's hope for all of us building a relationship. And therefore, my call upon every person listening, reach out to others. Get over your fear by reaching out, and then you will never regret it, because vulnerability brings possibilities.
Amen to that. Thank you so much to both of you. I cherish the time and I look forward to another opportunity to be with both of you. Thank you, UPF. Thank you for the amazing work that you do. Thank you, Daniel and Fakhr, for coordinating this session. And thank you to the audience for being there after a long day of fast or after a long day of homeschooling or whatever it is that you did. Ramadan Mubarak, and peace be with all of you. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you so much, Shakila, and thank you.
Thank you.